If you've been jonesing for a feuding family story and like the darker dramas where greed and revenge are central themes, you might want to check out Netflix's series The Abandons. Gillian Anderson and Lena Headey lead the cast of this Western thriller. So giddy up, partners, here we go! The matriarchs of two very different families, one of wealth and privilege, the other a found family of orphans and outcasts, find their fates linked by two crimes, an awful secret, a forbidden love, and a piece of land with silver underneath. So as I said, we've got Gillian Anderson and Lena Headey squaring off as the two powerfully fierce women in a Washington Territory town in the mid-1800s. Anderson is the wealthy, sophisticated, and influential one, while Headey is more frontiersy and rough. They both have adult kids, with Headey's children being kids without families. The story shares themes we've seen many times, especially in Westerns, but having the women being the dominant force, that's a bit of a twist on the primarily male-driven genre. There are multiple stories and movies that you'll see this gets inspiration from. Think Hatfields and McCoys, but much less hillbilly. Also similar in one aspect to Young Guns, where Mr. Tunstall takes in a smattering of rogue young men. One area is very Romeo and Juliet, but what also stands out here is that the entire story arc is very Shakespearean. And I'm not talking about the comedies, where everyone eats a ton, falls in love, gets married, and has lots of sex. No. This is a tragic drama, where we can tell fairly early on that things are going to get much worse before they even begin to get better. Now, at first, the story doesn't give us much background on our characters, and this comes throughout the first half of the series. It's typically delivered in some natural conversations, or when a character has a revelation through news or maybe eavesdropping. And despite just being thrust into the middle of an existing tension between the haves and the have-lesses, I did begin to connect with several of the players and then was concerned for their outcomes. But because the ensemble cast is rather large, many of the characters don't get the same type of development and understanding, meaning several of them I had trouble remembering who they were. I think this is most evident when a background character is involved in some sort of dramatic tussle or key moment, and I have no attachment or knowledge of them. But on the characters we do watch more intimately, they're given some decently engaging, if not obvious, story arcs. And we can instantly tell the two who are going to fall in love despite all the family tension. And it's also predictable when the eldest son finally falls in line with mommy's wishes and then takes the reins to rule with an iron fist. And these don't detract from the story, they're just familiar. But also the show contains some surprises that were certainly a welcome addition. I mean, many of them, they're not huge or groundbreaking, but they do showcase new layers to the cast, especially with the two matriarchs. Having additional depth makes them all the more intriguing and engaging, creating some avenues of compassion or cruelty that seemingly contradict their normal behaviors. And with this, I love the extremes we get in both looks and actions between Anderson and Headey. One is proper, rigid, focused, and unshaken, at least in public, while the other is rash, emotional, crude, and decisive. And it doesn't matter who she's around. Anderson is most often in this long black dress that buttons right up under the chin, and the visual she exudes is that of power and refinement. Yep. Somebody who's controlling, and more than likely one you don't ever want to double-cross. And while Headey also has a terrifyingly violent look in her eyes that just says she would gut you and toss you to the bears if you messed with her family, she's also very caring and loving, except in a mostly dysfunctional manner. Now, Headey wears pants, a button-up shirt and jacket, looking rugged and tough. And the visual contrast between the two, it's striking and instantly identifiable as to their upbringing and then their current status within the town. Now, in addition to these two women, the series has some other fairly recognizable actors taking part, like Michelle Huisman, Aisling Franciosi, Nick Robinson, Diana Silvers, Patton Oswalt, Mark Menchaca, Michael Greyeyes, and Brian O'Byrne. And each of them are varied in style, personality, and demeanor. And all of these particular actors, they create lasting impressions, whether that be through heroism or treachery. Now, the set designs and environment, they are exquisitely captured. There's this grittiness to the world where we can feel the dirt and the dust that just permeates everything. And the building facades, they look as you'd expect of an Old West town. But there's also this air of wealth, especially within Anderson's home. And that certainly makes the family stand out like a shiny quarter in a sea of filthy pennies. And I don't know if anybody else is going to see it, but The foyer and staircase of Anderson's home really reminded me of Hill House in Mike Flanagan's The Haunting of Hill House. Now maybe it's just because the style is kind of gothic and massive, or maybe it is a reused set. But either way, there's opulence in her surroundings that clashes with most of the other homes and buildings, illustrating her power and standing that's within the community. Like most Westerns, the storytelling is more patiently doled out. And while there is action, it's somewhat sparsely delivered. But that doesn't mean it's not violent or exciting. I mean, there are some brutal exchanges that intensify the tension between the feuding families. This creates scenes that are tense, sometimes deadly. Now, the familiar arc of revenge creating more revenge, which then creates more revenge, that works to amp up the anxiety and stress surrounding what the families might do next to each other. And at some point, we can assume that one or both families are going to be wiped from existence if they continue down that senseless circle of violence. Now, although aspects of this plot are slowly but consistently delivered, there are portions to the narrative that come about more abruptly and feel rushed. Because I binged this, it may be more noticeable than if I'd spaced out the episodes a bit, but when watching as one long story, elements that are driving us towards the finale begin to lose detail in favor of fervor. Say that 5 times fast. Well, it's not like you can't follow what's happening or the key points are missing. They just come about more quickly than previous portions. And then for the dialogue, while most of it sort of is appropriate for the time period, there were a few phrases that I caught that felt extremely modern and just not something that you would hear from an Old West town. Now, thankfully, these aren't scattered throughout the script, but they did stand out when they were delivered. For me, probably the largest drawback for this series is that the story ends on a cliffhanger. I mean, it's at the height of the climax, then the credits roll. Now, I loved the haunting final image, and it is an excellent tease, but it's frustrating. So overall, The Abandons is an engaging dark western featuring 2 dynamic and formidable leads. While the arcs are predictable, thanks to being similar to other stories, the varied characters are captivating to watch as they scheme. The pacing is mainly patient, keeping true to a Western storytelling style, but because a few episodes are much shorter than others, the plot does feel rushed in spots, creating the illusion that information is being skimped on in favor of expediency. With beautiful sets and costuming, we're transported into this Washington territory and taken on a journey filled with deception, love, betrayal, greed, and questionable integrity. This was an enticing series, made all the better thanks to the strong female leads that we have with Gillian Anderson and Lena Headey. There's sex, nudity, a ton of profanity, and a lot of violence. I give The Abandons 4 out of 5 couches. So do you enjoy Westerns? I mean, modern Westerns, old Westerns, whatever. If so, do you have a favorite? Now, I've really enjoyed some of the more recent remakes, like 3:10 to Yuma, Magnificent Seven, True Grit. Let me know some of yours, though, in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.